it's the Wild West, right? People are charging crazy. I mean, Ruta and I have literally seen a marketing agency charge 70k for an ICP document that looks like something that my nan made on PowerPoint and was clearly written in ChatGPT.
How to find a B2B marketing agency that doesn't suck. Welcome back to a fresh episode of Breaking B2B. I'm your host, Sam Dunning, founder over at breakingb2b.com. So joining me today, I've got Emma and Ruta. They're the co-hosts at the Blame It On Marketing podcast, and they're both fractional CMOs. Welcome. How are we doing?
Thank you. Good intro. We should start doing it. That's so boring.
Well, I don't know about that. I need to mix it up, I think. I've been doing the same for a long time. But consistency, I guess. But yeah, lovely to have you both. We're going to be talking about something that I think a lot of our audience will find useful, be it marketers, founders, revenue leaders watching or listening, how you can actually find a solid agency for your B2B tech or service company. We're going to be diving into the problem we see with most agencies, what red flags to look out for, what to avoid, but also how you can find an agency that's going to be worth their salt and actually drive some impact, drive some pipeline, drive some revenue, drive some cash in the bank for your business. So we don't mess around. Let's dive straight in. What is the problem with most B2B marketing agencies?
Where do you want to start?
You want to go, Emma? Cover off one side?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think first of all, you know, in terms of like B2B marketing agencies, there are now so many. That's one of the first issues, right? There are so many, some of them being real specialists in particular, like marketing, you know, specialisms, and others being like generalists. We can do everything, you know, and I think that's part of where the problem starts, right? Is that the expectation on the other end as the person bringing in the agency is that you know what you want and what you need. And then what tends to happen is you're kind of maybe looking at agencies that aren't actually a good fit for you. So I think that's probably the first start. And as I say, there's lots of agencies, so everybody's like, yeah, we'll take the work kind of regardless of whether it's the right fit or not. So yeah, that's just one bit. I think Ruta's definitely going to have more.
Yeah, I think there's, so no offense to anyone who might be this person that I'm talking about, there's lots of super young people coming out of school or maybe quitting university and opening digital agencies because it's very much in like the hustle culture, manosphere, weirdness of the internet, pipelines, place to do those kind of things. And it's a business that you can open with very little cost. You can probably teach yourself a lot, but a lot of the time they will lack that expertise and understanding of what it's like to be in-house as a marketer, and what it's like to actually drive for results and the pressures that you have. So if you've always been agency side, or you've just come out of school and like this is the first thing you do, you can do a lot of things to, one, harm your business and yourself, but also you will then kind of carry that forward for all other digital agencies and freelancers and marketers, unintentionally. But if someone has a bad experience, they have a bad experience, right? So they think we're all like that.
Yeah. And then maybe at the opposite end of the spectrum is agencies that are still like kind of either behind the times or not really fully understanding the economic pressures of the businesses that they're going into. And so it's the Wild West, right? People are charging crazy. I mean, Ruta and I
whatever you want,
have literally seen a marketing agency charge 70k for an ICP document that looks like something that my nan made on PowerPoint and was clearly written in ChatGPT because of the language used and everything else. So yeah, and I think, you know, a lot of businesses, a lot of founders don't know what they should be charged. They don't know what good looks like. And so, yeah, opposite ends of the spectrum there. Like, you've got people who have no experience, people who have a lot of experience, but are sort of taking the piss. So, yeah, it's really hard to be in the middle of all that, to be honest. Like, if you're the agency and you're good, or if you're trying to bring in an agency, it's hard.
Yeah, let's dive in. Real quick, are you tired of seeing competitors above you in Google's organic search results and AI search every time dream clients are searching for your solution, your software, comparing vendors, or looking for problems that you solve? Meaning those competitors are stealing traffic, mindshare, pipeline, and revenue just because they invested in an SEO program. We fix that at Breaking B2B with an unusual approach to SEO and content marketing for B2B and SaaS companies. Why not book a call to see if we can start driving pipeline and revenues as quick as 90 days with our different approach? Head over to breakingb2b.com to grab a call. I look forward to chatting to you soon. Back to the episode. So many options. Completely agree. I mean, as a marketer or early stage founder, like you say, choosing an agency or a contractor is a minefield. So I think the first point you made is that a lot try to be, let's say, jack of all trades generalists, and may not necessarily be the right fit for yourself if you're looking for an agency, or vice versa if you're an agency trying to serve a prospect. Let's go a bit deeper on that point. Like, what should you do as the team searching for an agency to see if they might be the right fit for your needs? And feel free to use any examples or scenarios.
Yeah, I think the first thing is figuring out what you actually need. So sit down, if you've done some marketing, figure out what's working, what you want to do more of. If you've done no marketing and you're getting an agency, then it's with the expectation of, we're going to have to figure out what works, and we might have to like change and chop quite a lot in our relationship. It's not going to be like, we make a plan and that's it and we go with it. So figure out what you need, and really figure out what areas of expertise you need, because an agency might be a jack of all trades, but for example, if you need specifically a little bit more support in the copywriting, for example, or a little bit more support in the technical of like website setup, that kind of thing, figure out if they actually have those specialisms in agency, or if everyone's a jack of all trades and then you're all kind of just like struggling with specific things that might be more technical, whether it's actually technical or like technical in a different way. So that's the first thing I would do, and be really honest with yourself.
Yeah. I also think you need to think through, how hands-on do you want the agency, freelancer, consultant, fractional person to be, right? So I think quite often, when you bring in an agency, people are disappointed when they realise that they have an account manager, they speak to the account manager, the person who's doing the work might be somewhere over here. You might never get to speak to that person. In some agencies, I'm not saying all agencies, and that might not be what you want. You actually might want someone who is a jack of all trades, for example, who can help you with lots of different parts of your marketing function, but you actually need that person to be in the team and part of the team, in which case you're looking for a fractional. You're not looking for a marketing agency. So again, I think first of all, what do you actually need? Then how hands-on do you want that person or that team to be? And then also what comes with that is like really thinking through what your budget is. Because no marketing is free. It's just not, sorry. Even if someone's spending their time on it, it's not free. And therefore, I would probably say in quite a lot of cases, you get what you pay for. So if you want a freelancer off Fiverr and you want something quick and dirty and you're not too fussed, that's okay. That's what you'll get.
Do it, yeah.
If you want someone who's going to come in and be like a strategic right-hand person who sits on the board, you got to expect to pay for that. So yeah, don't be shocked by that. So it's like budget to pay for the people, but also budget to pay for the work as well. So yeah.
Can I add one more point to that as well? So as we're talking about this, there's different kinds of specialism. There's specialism within marketing itself, but there's also specialism within industry. So for example, if you are a B2B tech company, you might want someone who knows B2B tech to be in with you, but also all depends on how integrated this person needs to be able to do a good job. So if someone needs to understand your ICP, your product, your problems in and out, like properly, like they're internal, that's going to be a very different relationship than to someone who can just go away, do a bit of search here and there, pick up what they need from you, and then go do their work. So also think about how much knowledge they need to have to make it makes sense in terms of like what they're doing. E.g. like copywriting is probably where you're going to need the most knowledge, or if they're doing any strategy. So that's another thing to think about. So specialism like within the actual field rather than marketing itself.
Yeah, some nice points. How much planning do you think, or brief setting, is on a prospective client, i.e. who's actually searching for the agency? I'll give you, the reason I ask is I actively turn down quite a lot of tenders. So if if a marketing leader comes to me with a tender, I'll usually politely decline, because I know it's going to be a bit of a song and dance, just because I've been in agency life for so long. So quite often I know that I'm going to have to do a sing and dance, quite literally, like put together a massive proposal, do a pitch on Zoom for like 5 different sessions in front of half the board, and then eventually they'll say they went with the incumbent. So I just don't do it. But I am biased, and I know they can work. But I guess the point I'm getting at is how much planning in terms of what you need, the problem you have, what you're trying to get to, budget, etc., is on the client side, or how much should be on, let's say, discovery for the agency to actually work out kind of if they're a good fit, the problems they have, what solution, if any, makes sense, etc. What are your thoughts there?
That's a good question.
I think I'm going to go with the like maybe political answer, which is that you should meet in the middle, right? Because if you don't brief in, how can you ever? If you don't brief in properly, like it doesn't matter whether you're in house or looking for an you're not going to end up with what's actually right. So you do need to be clear on that. It does get trickier though if you are, like, let's say, a founder or a CEO and you're looking for marketing support and you don't really know what you're looking for because you aren't a marketing expert. So at that point, but it is still on you to go and find a marketing expert to ask to find out what it is you need, because the chances are you probably do know someone, or there might be someone on your board that knows more about marketing than you. So that is on you. But then on the agency side, again, like you said, Sam, I think it is good for people to sort of almost maintain our like the integrity of our profession, if you like, that we should turn down stuff that's not right, and we should turn down stuff that is going to be a song and a dance and that you can sense there's a load of red flags, because it's not going to be good for anybody in the long run, and it's not going to be good for the next marketer either. So I think, and I get it, because we're talking from a fortunate position of having clients, and if you don't have any clients, it's terrifying, right? But yeah, it is kind of on both sides to kind of meet in the middle and make sure you've done your due diligence, basically, which is a really boring thing to have to do, but it's on you.
Yeah.
I think on the agency side, it's your time to kind of maybe start setting expectations as well. So if someone wants to spend, I don't know, $2,000 with you and expect their SEO like to be all the top keywords to be ranking in 1 in 3 months, you're going to be like, that's probably not going to happen, like unless it's something really crazy. So I think that's a good time to like have that back and forth and be like, hey, this is a lot, we think this is more reasonable, like feel free to go away and ask someone else. And if someone else can tell you they can do it for that much, then we're a little bit worried for you, but it is what it is. And that happens as well, right? Like how many times have we had like clients go away, get someone cheap, and then come back to us because like it turns out they couldn't do half of it, or like they just sometimes disappear as well. Or
they went with someone really expensive because the assumption was, oh my god, they're really expensive, they must be good because they're wearing suits and brown shoes, they must know what they're talking about. And 6 months later you're calling up saying, can you come and help please?
We've seen like marketing agencies that could have tanked companies in terms of how much they were charging and how little they were delivering. Like it's really awful to like come in after that and be like, oh guys, like what happened?
Yeah, it makes me think, I'm going to butcher this, but there's like a poster that I think was Ogilvy. It might have been another brand, but it literally has a massive picture of a backbone, and it says, this is a backbone. this is our standard for delivering results. It also means we don't take on projects we can't help with. It's something like that, some simple statement. Like I feel like I need that on the wall just to remind me, and I feel like any marketing agency should have that. And it's basically saying, like, don't take on every project, because I've been there at past agencies where I try and sell to anyone and everyone, and all it results in pain really is you end up underquoting or trying to over deliver, overstretch yourself, trying to deliver work that's not in your comfort zone. Client gets shit results, you get pain, there's backlash, and you realize that a lot of it comes down to desperation, I guess, in the sense agency side, not having a full pipeline of qualified opportunities. A lot of that comes down to from experience.
I think that's why it's also sometimes nice to work with freelancers, because freelancers have a very limited amount of hours they can do, so they will only take projects that make sense for them, which is usually a good indication of, like, they're not going to fuck you around unless they know they can work with you. But again, could be not the case.
But it's the same for everyone, right? Because the like, if you have those bad fit clients, like, even if, you know, like, if you are the people bringing in the agency, you know, like, imagine, you know, like, your clients churn if they have a bad experience with you. So it's the same for us. And I think people still have this really stupid view that you can go in and do something crappy and people won't be discussing it. Like, they will. You know, we operate in quite small worlds, I think, you know, like, it, you know, what's it, 6 degrees of separation, is that right? 7 degrees of separation, whatever it is.
It's more like 3 in B2B stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you know someone who knows someone who knows someone, like, that's it.
No, someone's going to ask about you at some point.
Yeah.
And if you did something crappy in that company, and I know it's basically like, oh yeah, but there's the financial pressure, there's the filling the pipeline, there's all of that kind of stuff, but if the client churns and then everyone's bad mouthing you, was it worth it in the first place? Probably not.
And equally, in the other way, like, there are people we will beg to work with every time when they're freelancers. We're like, please, can we have some of your time, because we know it's going to be good and we know that we can recommend them in and we are going to have a good time. So it works in both ways, the bad mouthing and the good mouthing.
Okay, so to wrap, I guess, this section of the show up, are we saying, like, some of the onus is on us as the prospect to kind of gather what we're actually trying to achieve, but also agency side, they should have a solid discovery process for
50-50.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We can work with that.
And if you can't do it, if you're a founder who doesn't know what they need, find a senior marketer to help you figure it out. We'll be happy to talk to you and not charge you for that kind of thing. There will be someone to talk to about that.
Okay. Pushing forward, so what do we... Are there signs that us, if we're in the market for an agency for whatever we're struggling with, what signs can we look out for, which is getting harder and harder, that this agency or this team or this contractor is going to be trustworthy and actually get us from point A to point B?
I would always go with the classic asking for a referral. If you can stump up a client that can say good things about you, then I feel like that's the ultimate trust point, right? I would also always want to know about their results. So, like, that's like the results they've achieved for clients, depending on what the work is, but also their financial results. Like, in the UK, we have Companies House. Doesn't take much to just go and look someone up and see what's going on. You know, I think in regards to the company that we were discussing earlier on that charged 70k for an ICP, if the client who paid that money had gone and done their due diligence properly and checked them out, they may not have ended up in that situation paying that money, because they would have seen that the people involved in that agency had a previously failed agency. There are some pretty salacious red top articles written about some of the directors of that agency, you know. So I think if you just do a little bit of homework on the people involved in the agency at the top, I think, you know, that should give you enough.
I think pushback as well, like, if an agency's saying yes to me regardless of what I'm saying, I'm like, surely guys, I'm not hitting this 100%. Like, even though I might know what I need, like there is limitations to everything, you know, it's either time, money, or resource, or like whatever. So I feel like pushback is good. And if an agency is hounding you down, or freelancer is hounding you down to make a decision, it's most likely because they really need to close you for financial reasons, which could be a mild red flag in terms of like, well, they clearly are struggling with revenue. Like, why are they struggling with revenue? So that's one. And pricing in general for me is a good sign. If someone's too cheap or too expensive, it's weird. I always ask questions about like, why are you charging that? Like, that doesn't make sense. So yeah, that's the little signs for me.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think that asking for references and checking the results and checking the company out, doing your due diligence makes sense. And pricing's a funny one, right? Pricing is a really detailed topic. Now, is there any guidance that you could give to check that you're paying a quote-unquote fair rate for deliverables?
Yeah.
Tricky, right? I actually think that's quite hard, right? Because obviously for agencies, generally they tend to charge by deliverables. So that's sort of, you should already know, if you're bringing in an agency, you should sort of expect that. So that's fair enough. I also think, let's say, for example, they do show you the results and then you're like, they are a bit more on the expensive side. Perhaps, again, that's an indication as to why. They're good at what they do. They're worth paying the money for. You know, it's almost like that value exchange thing. When it comes to like fractionals and freelancers, again, it's like the Wild West, you know. You've got people who are charging, I don't know, like £200 a day for fractional CMO work. Like, they're undervaluing themselves massively. Equally, at the other end of the spectrum, you've got consultants who go into some of the big four type businesses and charge $3,000 a day. So it really is such like a scale. And I think quite often what happens is people think, I can charge them this because I know they make X amount of money. So I feel like if you get a sense that that's what's going on, that's also a red flag. But yeah, it's quite difficult. I would say, Ruta, I hope you don't mind me saying this, we are probably more on the expensive side of fractional CMOs for B2B SaaS. But that's because we've been there, done it, got the t-shirt. Like, we've exited companies. That's what we do.
I can give some like rough numbers. At least these are what my numbers are in my head. So a junior freelancer, anywhere from like 150 to 400 pounds a day. A mid-level freelancer, 400 to 600. And then when you get into the fractional CMOs, it's 600 to 1,500. After 1,500, it's probably someone that's been around for too long, in my opinion. Up to 2,000, maybe, but you have to be really special to be in that 1,500 to 2,000 level.
You basically
that's for freelancers. Yeah, that's for freelancers, and usually those people will charge at project level anyway. They won't charge a day rate anymore. So that's for freelancers. For agencies, lots of agencies have switched from day rate to deliverables. Back in the day, day rate was like 800 to 1,200, somewhere in that range. If they're not telling you what their day rate is anymore, they're charging for deliverables. Try and figure out how long it will take them to deliver those deliverables, and then try and convert it into day rate. So if it's an SEO agency and they're doing like 5 website optimizations, 4 blogs and 3 backlinks, figure out what that actually looks like, you know, in terms of hours, and try and equate it to that. And also figure out what that looks like to you in terms of results, because it might be that those results are just, in terms of margin, completely unrealistic. So it's also about that, like, of the money you put into these people, how much are you going to get out? Obviously it's not always immediate, but like, what value can you attribute to that money? And that's my pricing. So if someone comes in with a 70k ICP, there is nothing you could do for me in a 70k ICP. Nothing. You could do an ICP for like the most complicated product in the world, but there is nothing that you could do in that ICP for me to pay you 70k. That's just wild. Never.
Yes, it is an interesting one. I think it's also interesting from both a buyer's perspective and from an agency's perspective, because pricing can also, if you look at it from the agency side, can define who you actually will be working with, because you will price out a lot of companies. Like if you go to a certain tier, like, for example, with ours, we know that smaller businesses just won't ever inquire, which is fine. Whereas with my last agency, when we were doing more websites, whereas now we focus kind of B2B and tech SEO, we're basically selling to everyone and anyone. I learnt the pain of trying to do that and kind of eventually niche down to B2B tech and B2B SaaS, and then kind of realised there's a lot more nuance and work involved in niching down, and usually these kind of folks appreciate that, and the ones that don't have a budget, great, we might not be a fit, we'll recommend a trusted freelancer or contractor. The other teams will be happy to discuss and see if we can help. So I think some of the agency side comes with experience, and sometimes you have to go through the pain of underselling and realizing what companies aren't a fit, and then eventually kind of finding that niche, finding that sweet spot. And I think also constantly raising your prices from the agency side, like each year, is quite smart.
Well, it's the same. It's the same as a freelancer or a fractional, right? You know, you have to think about yourself as a business. You are the business. Your time, and you do have to put your prices up. And because you have to survive, you have to pay your bills. So you know, we all have to do that, but consistently. I agree with that. I think consistently, whether you decide to do that in line with inflation or whatever it might be, or in line with, you know, perhaps you've been speaking to other people who work in the same sector and you realize you're really undercharging or undervaluing your skill set, you know, then, but you do have to do that. And I don't think anybody who delivers a service, if it's a good quality service, should ever be worried about asking for what the value exchange is worth. And I think a lot of, especially freelancers, I think on our side more so, are very concerned with doing that, because they feel like, oh, but what if they just see me as an expense? Well, you're probably working with the wrong clients then, aren't you?
Or you're doing the wrong work, right? If your work is an expense, then you're going to have a hard time either way. Like, especially if the economics are not great of the industry you're going after. Like, if your work is seen that looks like an expense and it's not driving results, then it's going to be hard either way.
What are your thoughts on contracts with agencies? I think that's always an interesting one. Like, we know there's the classic 6 to 12 month tie-in for certain deliverables, or some are month to month, or things like that. Like, and I know some big companies, like enterprises, sometimes prefer paying for like 2-3 years in advance because they can get a discount, and because their pay runs are like because their pay runs are like 60-day net, they'd actually prefer that, because it's going to take them 60 days to pay out the agency, and if they can pay for a 3-year bulk, they can save a ton of cash on payroll. Whereas smaller businesses, more startup, are going to be like, well, we want kind of minimum risk. So I don't know if you have any thoughts in terms of kind of agreements.
Again, it might be my bias and what kind of companies I work in, with what kind of companies I work. I would never pay an agency for more than a year. Like, it's the best way to, like, what's the word? De-incentivize them to actually care about results, is to pay them for 3 year upfront, and then at the end of 2.5 years, they'll start worrying about results and start picking up work. And, you know, and I'm not saying that everyone does this, it's just financially that is the incentive, right? Like, if you know you're cushy for 3 years, why max out what you're going to be doing and max out the resources and make it an expensive client for you to run? You're not. Like, it doesn't make any sense. I think there needs to be tie-in for certain deliverables. So like SEO, there's no point you not committing to at least 6 months. That, again, why are you doing it? At least 3 months, but that's like on a good shot. 6 months for sure. So contract it in. With freelancers, if it's a fractional of some sort, again, a contract for 6 months would be normal, but it might not be necessary. Like, I don't really do contracts. I just work with people until they don't want to work with me, because at that point I don't want to work with them either, you know. Like, it doesn't make sense. Everyone's unhappy at that point, right? If you actually want to get out and you can't get out. So yeah, what are your thoughts, Ems?
Yeah, I agree. I think contracting in the long term seems weird, because like, what if things haven't actually worked out the way they should have done, and all that kind of stuff. But I do understand, like, especially I think things like SEO, PPC, you do need a considerable amount of time to see if it's actually going to start working. And so, yeah, you can't really expect like a month-on-month contract with an SEO or a PPC agency. Like, I think that's probably just foolish. When it comes to, I do like a contract as a fractional. And that's because I feel like quite a lot of the time going in as a fractional in the roles that we sort of do, you're also managing the team. So there's like an aspect of stability attached. And it is really like crap for team members to constantly have like senior leadership chops and changes. But I am also like completely reasonable. Like if it wasn't working out for some reason, whatever that might be, I'd be like, we can end things if you want. Because you do have the flexibility of being reasonable, which obviously in an agency you don't have. But I think contracts are good because I am a stickler for a bit of governance and a bit of paperwork. And I think you need to lay your terms down clearly. And again, I think that's also part of your expectation setting process. Like you can, even if a company provides you with the contract and you sign it and it's their kind of standard T's and C's, you need to be reading, even as a freelancer, you need to be reading that stuff and you need to check that you're okay with that. I'm all for it, but also don't go for anything crazy. But equally, again, as a freelancer, you should at least expect 30 days notice from people to terminate your work, because again, we are our own businesses and we have to have a level of protection.
Freaking pay you on time.
Oh my god.
Oh my goodness. That's the one thing that I do put like in email. I don't typically write contracts, but I'm like 1 month notice and you will pay me on time or I will add money to your invoice, because for some reason freelancers, they think we're just swimming in cash and this is not how we pay our rent, so they just don't pay on time. Same with agencies, they think they can just like drag it out, and it's like, no, there's probably quite a few people getting paid based on you paying us. So yeah.
I think sometimes the long contract conversation is that then what I have seen agencies do is then just literally try and beef up the deliverables so that they can get paid. Because they're in a contract for a year, but the contract's based on deliverables. So it's like, and then you're just giving me shit for the sake of it. And it's like, and I have seen some agencies do that. And it's like, oh, right, so we need to bill our 10K this month or whatever it is, so we better write 12 blogs. Who wants 12 blogs in a month? Do me a favour. So, yeah, it's that kind of stuff. As long as whatever is happening from that paperwork perspective is driving the right behavior,
it's an incentive
results,
system, right? Yeah,
then it's all good. Then do what you need to do.
Yeah, good point. I think it's, I didn't used to do agreements or contracts, but now kind of having a small team, I think from my side I need to, so I can give my team the SOW, the scope of work, and they know what the deliverables are per client, etc. And likewise the client knows what we've got to adhere to. But like you said, I think it's important that they're actually linked to a metric, i.e. if the contractor or the agency is promising to ramp up pipeline or ramp up revenue or certain metrics that they've discussed, then those have got to be linked back to that in terms of the assets, in terms of the end reporting, etc. I think that's equally important. And I think a 30-day out is fine, because like you said, if it's not working as a relationship, then it's not really beneficial to either side. And I have had 1 or 2 clients, in fact we've had, which I think I've talked about on LinkedIn, we had 1 or 2 tech companies that actually just went like they went too aggressive on marketing, they lost a load of cash and they just had to pull out of agreement. And I said, well, I'm not going to hold you to a 6-month term even though you signed. Like, why would I do that? It's just not kind, it's not good business. Like, I understand, like, let's part ways, because stuff like that's going to happen. So I think it's also being reasonable, being fair, and making sure the agencies are tied to stuff that are going to hit the metrics that you actually care about. So we've talked a lot about kind of qualifying the right company. I suppose the other thing that we should discuss is kind of to make sure they're actually delivering and having any difficult conversations with the team if they're not.
I'll let you go.
I think the difficult conversations one is it's actually really interesting. No, it's really interesting. Ruta and I were doing a talk a little while ago to a group of PRs, and this comes up a lot with PR, because, you know, it's sometimes seen as this really fluffy thing, isn't it? That, you know, that has no, it's not good unless we're in the national press, you know. And I think it ties back to, like, if the client, for example, doesn't have a strategy, it's kind of on you as the agency to kind of enforce what you think the right strategy is, and to kind of get them bought in and doing it. Because that's the other thing. It's like, oh, they have no marketing strategy, rub your hands together, we can do whatever the hell we like. No, that's not the right attitude to have. And then you do end up having more difficult conversations. It's much better if you want to take the time up front to do that work, kind of make sure we're following a plan, and then to use that as the thing to kind of go back on and be like, okay, so we said we were going to do this, this was our strategy, this is the why we're doing it, and we're not doing that, we're doing this, or there's delays on your end or whatever. So we're holding everybody accountable. So it doesn't kind of matter which way round or who that comes from. If it either comes from the company or the agency or the freelancer, that's got to happen. I know a lot of people don't love that, but you will get into more difficult conversations if you don't do it that way, especially the one around sign off, right? I think that's one of the biggest things that holds agencies and other people back, like other freelance marketers back, is the sign off for stuff takes too long, and by the time it's signed off, well, there's just no point. But if you can agree that stuff all up front, and it's tied to a strategy and tied to metrics, it's a lot easier. It's not a difficult conversation then, it's just a, what's going on, guys?
Yeah, you gotta tie it back to what's important to you. So, like, if an agency is saying, we're gonna give you 4 blog posts, yeah, so what? Like, I don't need blog posts, I need revenue, you know, like, whatever it is. Tie it back to the thing that matters to you, and find a set of metrics that will maybe not, you know, perfectly align, but indicate those things. And then the other thing for me is, like, the easiest way that you can piss me off as a client is to not report out of the things that I report out of. So if I have HubSpot and I'm paying $1,000 a month for my HubSpot, you better believe you're going to be reporting my HubSpot numbers to me, because that's what everything is connected for me, and that's the thing I live out of. Like, I don't want your Google Tag Manager crap, or like whatever it is, you know, like it happens. Like, I want my conversions in HubSpot where I can see what people came through where. Like, I don't need a blank statement conversion out of Google Analytics, for example. So I think that's the other way to really make sure that the deliverables are the deliverables are happening, is to make sure that you're reporting out of the thing that actually shows you the deliverables, instead of like maybe just what the agency fancies reporting out of. And if you can get that aligned, then you're always talking about the same stuff. It's never like, oh, but this is this and this is this. Like, how many times have we had those conversations?
Yeah, I think it sounds like a lot of it comes down to setting expectations up front, so you don't shoot yourself in the foot. And also, I think client side realizing that there is going to be some work on your end as well, especially like you mentioned there, like with us, like on the SEO side, the biggest bottleneck is if clients can't review landing pages or blog posts or PR work we're doing or things like that to sign it off, because otherwise, if they're going to take several months to do that, everything's pushed back several months. So I think it's being realistic up front and saying, look, if you're not going to have the time at all to review this stuff, then it's not going to work. We're going to need to agree to, you're going to have to give us feedback within, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks to keep stuff pushing forwards. If that's not realistic, then maybe we should revisit this in, I don't know, a few months when things calm down. So those kind of difficult conversations. Or just let us post stuff
and then edit it later. You know, that's also an option. Like, we're not going to post anything that crazy.
This is why I'm a process girly, because I'm like, here is, what project management tool do you use? We're going to use that. We're going to run this in there. Like, you're going to be able to see everything. Everything's got a deadline on it. You know, what you're expected to do is in there. What I'm expected to do is in there. All the links to the docs are in there. Like, there is no kind of... someone once said to me that you can be very smug if you have everything written down. Like, if anybody ever comes back to you and says you didn't do that, well, that can't happen if you wrote it down. Like, it's there, it's publicly visible. So, like, you know, if you don't do that, then you are kind of potentially opening yourself up to these difficult things. Whereas if that's there up front, you know, take the time to do it, even if you're a freelancer. And the other bit to this is even from the get-go, talking to clients about how they like to communicate, because we don't all like to communicate in the same way. I hate it when someone adds me to Teams. I will grin and bear it and deal with it. But if they add me to a Teams channel, I'm crying on the inside. But like, if, you know, like I will say to people, please don't WhatsApp me. This is even with my clients. Like, don't WhatsApp me unless it's about your dog. Like, I don't just call me out of nowhere. Like, my channels for communication are Slack and email, unless it's like an actual emergency. And I think even like that stuff is useful, because then we kind of know where we all stand. And you've asked the same question back. You've said, how do you want to communicate? What tools do you use? You know, get that stuff, just get that shit out of the way, because it's just going to make life easier.
Yeah. Good points. I think that's great. I think setting expectations is smart for both sides. And I think we've gone through almost a bit of a checklist, really, on what you should do to find the right agency, make sure it's a good fit, and also understanding the responsibility client side to make the relationship work. So with that, I want to thank you both for coming on the show, and please do tell us more about your podcast, your business, and how anyone tuning in can follow or connect with you both.
Yeah, so we are from the B2B Marketing Podcast, as I mentioned at the beginning. If you want to find us, literally Google us. We're on all the podcast platforms, and we also have an episode that's going to be launching in a couple of months with Sam about why SEO just won't die. So we hope that you can tune into that. And then Emma and I are fractional CMOs. If you ever want to work with us and have some of this open and honest marketing chat, we're here for you. So you can, again, find us on LinkedIn or wherever else you might be listening to us.
Appreciate it. Thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Good stuff. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, why not join thousands of other B2B legends enjoying our unusual newsletter for weekday tips, ideas, case studies, weird SEO experiments, and B2B marketing concepts. You can head over to breakingb2b.com and hit that newsletter tab. And with that, we'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.